to Policy and Politics with me, Tarun Nangia. Today we're going to discuss Prime Minister Narendra Modi's successful visit to the United States of America. Also, we go back, in a sense, a few decades and see the evolution of this relationship. I remember Bill Clinton's, the then president's visit to India, and the positive vibes, then the nuclear deal. And progressively, this relationship has been growing from strength to strength, be it people-to-people movement, be it trade. Also, a lot of investment that we see into India from, we are today sitting in NCR, and how many American companies operate from here? It is in the hundreds. So there is also a strong element of confidence in this country that we see from US's side. All this and more. I have an expert panel who can articulate much better than me on this. So may I welcome Ambassador Ashok Sajanar. He's served in official capacity in United States when the trade deal happened. Good to see you, and looking forward to some interesting insights from your end. I have with me Senior Advocate Lalit Bhasin. He's the President of Society of Indian Law Firms, and importantly, he's the National President of the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce. Good to see you, Mr. Bhasin. Looking forward to some interesting insights. I have with me Abhijit Iyer Mitra. He's an expert on foreign affairs. Good to see you, Mr. Mitra, and looking forward to some interesting insights. At the outset, if I may go to Ambassador Sajanar and request you in about the first 2-3 minutes, if you could lay the ground, also from a retrospective effect, and also the current, what happened in the Prime Minister Modi's visit, and then we take on for the other comments. Over to you, Mr. Sajanar.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tarun, for having me on your show. It's a formidable challenge in 2-3 minutes to recount what has happened over the last 20 odd years and also give an account of the current state of affairs. But let me make a couple of general comments. Number one, in my view, it was a historic visit as far as Prime Minister Modi's visit from 21st to 23rd June is concerned. I think it heralded a new chapter of a deeper strategic partnership between the two countries. Now, as far as some of the facts are concerned, this was the 8th visit of the Prime Minister to the United States, the maximum that he has traveled to any country. So I think it indicates the importance that Prime Minister Modi attaches to this relationship. Secondly, it was the state visit official state visit to the United States. Now, I think your viewers should know that state visits to the United States are very infrequent. In fact, in Mr. Biden's term of 2.5 years, Prime Minister Modi's visit was the 3rd state visit to take place. So I think it also underlines the importance that the United States places to its relations with India, and also the contribution that Prime Minister Modi has made to this relationship. Thirdly, he was also invited by both houses, the Senate as well as the House of Representatives, to give a joint address to the US Congress. Now, this was his 2nd address to the US Congress. He is the only Indian leader, the only Indian Prime Minister to have addressed the US Congress more than once, that is twice. In fact, even as far as world leaders are concerned, there are only 4 leaders who have addressed the US joint session more than once. One is Winston Churchill, the other is Nelson Mandela, and there are 2 prime ministers from Israel. So we can make out that this was a special visit in that sense. The next point I would like to say is that there is, for the last 20 plus years, you mentioned about the visit of President Bill Clinton in March 2000. So over the last 23 years, there has been a bipartisan support for the India relationship in the United States, and also a bipartisan support in India as far as ties with the United States are concerned. The last few points that I would like to mention is Prime Minister Modi over the last 9 years has worked with the 3 presidents of the United States. Barack Obama, who was a Democrat, Donald Trump, who was a Republican, and now for the last 2.5 years, it is with President Joe Biden. A lot of work has gone into this relationship over the last 9 years, and I'm sure in your program you will come on that. But what I would like to say is that the current visit was really a culmination of all the good work that has been done. So today, India and the United States is India's largest trading partner. There are huge investments of about $60 billion from the United States into India. In terms of technology, I think that was the big takeaway from this visit. What we saw that in the past, the United States has been very reluctant in sharing its high tech with India, but that technology denial regime seems to have been done away with. So we see whether it is in the area of semiconductor chips, it is in the area of artificial intelligence, 5G, 6G, in the area of space, health, all these areas. The United States has been very ready to share its technology with India. And of course, in the area of defense, we see whether it is the transfer of technology of GE 414 engines, their progressive manufacture here, or the supply of MQ-9B Predator drones. So across the board, there, I think this visit, the results of this visit has the potential to catapult the bilateral partnership to a much higher level. Tarun.
Thank you for that opening and introductory comment. I'll go across to Dr. Lalit Bhasin. Now, you as the president of Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, how do you view Prime Minister Modi's visit and your initial comments on the growing of this relationship? Of course, geopolitics very much a part of it. Today, we are at a place where India forms that piece of the puzzle that US would want to be on, its side. Your inputs on the same.
Ambassador Ashok Sajanar has virtually covered the entire field in this. I agree, you see, that's stupendous success and historic also. But it was not, you see, the results were not achieved overnight. The relationship between India and the United States has seen a steady growth over the last 30, 40 years. For the reason that they are natural allies, being the two largest democracies in the world committed to rule of law, the United States and India should have been natural allies right from the inception. But in between, there were certain roadblocks and some differences and all that. But during the last 20, 25 years, under the regime of under the prime ministership of Mr. Manmohan Singh, Mr. Narasimha Rao, Rajiv Gandhi, Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, you see that this has seen a steady growth. But a new leaf has been turned as a result of the visit of Prime Minister Modi by opening so many avenues of cooperation, not just in the field of defense, which is of top priority for India, but also in the field of economic cooperation, encouragement of trade and commerce. After all, the strength of a country depends upon its economic strength. Economic strength can be achieved only if you have good relations, you see, with such other superpowers, because India is also an emerging superpower now. It will be possibly the fifth superpower. So US and India, they have joined hands together as a result of Prime Minister Modi, and many avenues have been opened up in the field of, as Ambassador Ashok Sajanar has pointed out, in the field of defense, in the field of technology, and in the field of promoting trade and commerce. So that is, I think, I look forward to the implementation of these understandings and arrangements and the agreements. Agreements should not remain on paper only. They should be enforced. They should be implemented. And I'm sure that when implemented, these will have very good results, you see, for the economic growth of India.
I would like to emphasize that India-US relations stand on their own strength. There is an inherent logic of that particular relationship, which even if China did not exist, I think that relationship would have been very strong. It would have been very robust. It would have been very vibrant. And that is why I had mentioned, Tarun, right at the beginning, that we have $192 billion worth of bilateral trade in goods and services. This is the highest trading partner for India. And it is also one of the few trading partners with which we have a positive balance of trade. As compared to that, if you look at what our bilateral trade with China is, it might be about $100 billion, but it is heavily skewed against us. We have a very negative balance of trade with China. Also, as I mentioned very briefly, that the United States seems to have made this decision that it is going to, earlier it used to be said that there would be decoupling with China, but now the decoupling has been left out and we are talking about de-risking. That means none of the sophisticated technologies would be going to China. And number two, that there would not be an over-dependence on China for any of the products. We have seen how China has weaponized this supply chains. So we have seen that there is going to be huge investment that is going to come to India. Investment means job creation. Investment means technological upgradation. We are also going to create a technology ecosystem within the country. And I think that is going to help India to become stronger. And we want to be stronger. We want to be we have emerged as a more self-assured country. But in terms of protecting our territorial integrity and sovereignty, number one, and number two, to provide a better standard of living to our people, we need all this technology from the United States that we are getting. And of course, the issue of geopolitics and the issue of the rise of an assertive and a belligerent China is, adds on to that. And that takes us to the whole issue of free and open, inclusive, prosperous, secure Indo-Pacific. And that is also something that we can speak about going forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador Sajana, for your intervention. Abhijit Iyer Mitra has joined us again. Abhijit, your inputs on the Indo-US relationship, also with the China angle, where is it headed?
Okay, so there's several things out here. First thing we need to remember is we're not in the same situation as 1971, where you had a president and secretary of state who hated us, houses of Congress that were generally pro us, a military that was sent against us, and a press that was championing us. Today, there are significantly different shades out here. We have a president who seems to be quite pro-India, a military that is very keen on the relationship with India, one particular party in the houses of Congress that seems to be very keen to play spoil sport with everything, and a press that seems to be cheerleading them on to play that spoil sport. Now, the question is, how do we balance these things all up? Because remember, in this particular session as well, 3 very prominent members decide to boycott the Prime Minister's speech. And 70 other members of just one party, might I remind you, signed the letter, while every single member of the other party, the Republican Party, refused to sign that particular letter to the president. Now, what worries me is, in this particular government, we know that the siloization and the factionalism within the Democrats is at peak levels. You do not have a president who is able to impose his will across all bandwidths. And so factionalism tends to be quite rampant. What really worried me is that one person who many people believe to be sort of the eminence grise, the power behind the throne or whatever, President Obama decided to make some unnecessary comments at that particular point of time. Him being a president, he should have known, I personally think he should have known better than to have made those comments at that particular time. But it has happened. What does this mean? The second thing is to do with our relationship with China. Now, and where America comes into all of this. Now, Ambassador Sajanhar touched upon the kind of transfer of technology that we're getting. The engine deal hasn't been finalized yet, but the Predator drone deal, the MOU, has been signed. And that is very significant because even though the figure of 3.5 billion has been given by the press, it is not an official figure. Assume it becomes the real figure. The kind of, I don't like the word offsets, but the kind of work share agreements we're getting out there opens up a market value of close to about $10 billion over the next 10 years, as opposed to an investment of 3.5 billion. The biggest thing in the joint statement there was the global maintenance, repair, and overhaul facility being opened here in India. The problem again is America is today mirroring India in a way. China is a strategic threat and Pakistan is the tactical threat. And you want to focus on China, but you're constantly forced to focus on Pakistan because, what do you focus on? Do you focus on your cancer or do you focus on your headache? Because in the cancer, you have to go for chemotherapy one time. But with the headache, it just keeps coming over and over and over again. And you have to keep taking Dolopar over and over and over again. So, Pakistan is the Dolopar, Pakistan is the headache for us. And we need the Dolopar. And we can't really focus on the chemo. With America, they are facing a very similar situation today with Russia. They're bogged down in a sort of tactical thing which doesn't really hurt them. I mean, if Russian-American relations were bad, the real theater should be the Barents Straits operations, right? With Alaska and Russia literally look at each other. And yet it's the European theater that's getting hot. They prefer to play the sort of distant proxy rather than the home front game out there. We're both facing a very similar situation. I think we're both bogged down with a kind of strategic diversion, which is what China wants. The sooner, and if you just give me one more minute, I want to point out, even through the Cold War, Tarun, our fundamental foreign policy was always the same. Our relations became bad because we didn't explain it properly to each other. What was that foreign policy goal? It was that Russia and China should never come together. We will never accept a power bloc in Asia that dominates the resources of Asia, which is why, Nehru tried to build up the Bandung Conference. Soviet Union is the global leader, but China is the Asian leader kind of thing. Right? We never explained it to them properly. There were missteps along the way and ultimately shared goal, but different methods, and we kind of fell out with each other. I don't think that's going to happen anymore because Jaishankar is not Krishna Menon. He's not going to go to the UN and rub people the wrong way. I don't think he rubs people the wrong way. He's very good at not rubbing people the wrong way, except the people who deserve to be rubbed the wrong way. So let's see. I'm hopefully optimistic.
Okay, quite hopefully optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic, sorry.
Rephrasing yourself. I'll go to Dr. Lalit Bhasin. Dr. Lalit Bhasin, because you come from the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, I think you are the only lawyer there to be holding that post, and a very crucial one among all the promoters and businessmen out there. What about challenges at the WTO? What about challenges that occur routinely? See, the trade deal has been in discussion since Robert Lighthizer time. And I think those were tough negotiations, but the deal never happened. Your inputs on when do we see light on those things? Also, imposition of duties on imports from India. Of course, there were some concessions made now on that. On the trade front, how are things looking? Also, if you could focus on the H-1B visa issue, Indians want more and more of them. I think among other things, we also export a lot of people all over the world. That is our principal export. And we actually are good at it. I mean, the people who do go out of India actually contribute to the economies they go to, and successfully so. Your inputs on that.
Very, very important issues you have raised. Besides, you see the outcome which has resulted in improving business in technology, infra, aviation, mergers and acquisitions and joint ventures, and a big leap forward in defense after the nuclear cooperation. What I have seen is the practical outcome is that there were 6 major WTO disputes, you see, which were pending. Those disputes have been resolved amicably, and the retaliatory tariffs imposed on chickpeas, lentils, almonds, apples, boric acid, diagnostic agents, you see that those tariffs have been addressed by India, which was a result of removal of US tariffs on steel and aluminum. Now, this has resulted in restoring and expanding market opportunities for US agriculture producers and manufacturers. But then other than that, there are certain issues which I would like to raise, which our members of the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, which is actually the only bilateral chamber in both the countries, that there are still 6 major disputes which remain unresolved, which are pending before WTO. Then there are differences in the intellectual property rights perceptions. Americans are keen that how India can protect innovations and also access to medicines. Other issue which you rightly raised is about our people going to US. Now, obviously, the current issue is very vital that there are visa problems. You see, temporary visa policy of the United States is affecting Indians working in the United States. H1 visa is another, you see, that is another issue which is pending, which requires. Recently, visa fee has been increased. What India has been seeking is a totalization agreement to coordinate social security protection for workers who split their careers into US and India, that there should be some continuity in the social security protection to be given, you see, to those workers who are there. Then added to that is that what is required is also government to government, they have done their job. But then people to people, that is very important, people to people, that is mutual cooperation, understanding, and that is where the role of the chambers of commerce, the professional bodies, like which one I represent in India, Society of Indian Law Firms, and the American Bar Association, with whom we have the most cordial relations, and there are often mutual exchange of visits also. That is a part of, you see, people to people promoting the ties, then exchange, easy access to healthcare, then sharing, expanding opportunities, particularly in Hollywood and Bollywood. You see, that's a very important area. Hollywood and Bollywood is not just entertainment. I think these are areas which require, and I'm confident and I'm aware that the government is promoting. Then in the field of education policy now to open up, you see, the university education in India, and also promoting tourism. Therefore, these issues and what India has achieved through help of US is that India is a part of Quad, you see, with Australia and US, and also engaged in Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which is for prosperity, to build supply chain resilience among reliable partners. Lowering of tariffs will follow as a result of India now being engaged in Indo-Pacific Economic Framework and all that. So these are some of the issues which have yet to be taken care of, but steps have already been taken. And I'm sure that in the near future, we will see these issues being resolved. Another concern of the United States is FDI reforms, that raising foreign equity caps, you see, particularly in the field of insurance and other things. That is one issue which is pending. And then the GSP, which is the generalized system of preferences, from which India was removed, you see. Yeah. So that needs to be... and also treatment of India's digital services tax, which was viewed by US as discriminatory. These are the issues which need to be addressed.
Point. Thanks you for highlighting many of them as you did in your answer. Quite a varied. You went from food to WTO to all these things. But now there are two other areas that I would like to focus. Actually, I also agree with when you said about media and entertainment. We also realized in the past few years a lot of back-end animation production work of this kind was made done in India, and then of course through the digital economy transferred. A lot of Hollywood films were in a sense developed in India. All their special VFX, all the effects works. I understand a bit of this, so I can share with personal knowledge. I'll go to Ambassador Ashok Sajjan. Two things. The joint statement spoke about co-production, co-development. Also the semiconductor unit that's now finally coming to India, which they will invest in. So do you see that strategically India's importance is now viewed at a level that how they patronized, in a sense, how America patronized China about 40, 45 years ago, I think during Henry Kissinger's time when, he made that visit, and you saw how China's production grew with American demand. Do you see India taking up that role where America, in a sense, will view India as a production hub? We saw the iPhone unit now coming to India. The semiconductor unit is now coming. Do you see India taking that role what China had for America 40 years ago?
Let me put it this way, Tarun, that I think when the United States started supporting China in the late 70s, early 80s, it was basically in the areas of, giving them larger quotas for textiles under the multi-fiber arrangement, in terms of, all the other household goods. So, it helped China to become the factory of the world, manufacturing hub of the world. I think what is going to happen as far as India is concerned, that it is going to become a place of high-tech, high technology industry as far as India is concerned. And that is what you've been seeing. You mentioned about semiconductor, you mentioned about Micron, $850 million investment, the investments from Google, from Microsoft in tens of billions of dollars. And, also as far as defense is concerned. So I think definitely the center of gravity in terms of the supply chains, and that is what is most critical. And I think it has made China extremely nervous, because just before Prime Minister Modi's visit started, there was a long article by none other than Wang Yi himself. Wang Yi is very well known to India. He's it was Wang Yi who was writing himself that it is that the United States is trying to build up India and trying to make it a very integral part of the global supply chains, and that this is not going to succeed, and China has its own inherent strengths, and China will continue to be the major supply chain center as far as the world is concerned. So I think it has China extremely worried as far as the growing bonhomie between India and the United States is concerned. Let me also, if you permit, Tarun, one or two responses to, what Abhijit had mentioned, and I quite liked his analogy that he had given between a headache and a cancer. Now, he might say that Russia is a headache and China is the cancer. But you would recall that, when President Biden came to power, it was thought that it was not known as to how he's going to respond to Quad, because the rejuvenation of Quad in 2017 was done by Trump. And, people thought that he might think that this is a product that has come from his predecessor, so he will not give it much attention. But over the last 25 months, the Quad at the summit level has met 5 times, 3 times in person and twice virtually. So, his engagement, Biden's engagement with the Russia issue in Russia-Ukraine conflict has not in any way diluted his focus or attention to the Indo-Pacific, to the threat that China poses. And the last Quad summit was in Hiroshima. It was to take place in Sydney, but because Mr. Biden could not go there for his own domestic debt negotiations, it was decided to hold it there. The last one was held in Tokyo again last year in May, and the first one in September 2021 in Washington, D.C. And the next one is going to be held next year in India. The point I'm making is that the eyes are not off the Indo-Pacific. The eyes are not off China. The focus continues to be there on China. The next point that I would like to make is that, fine, 3 of the Congress persons, members of the House of Representatives didn't come. But look at it. 632 members of the Congress were present, and they gave 15 standing ovations to the Prime Minister when he was talking. So I think let us not try to magnify the negatives. Let us take cognizance. And I think even as far as what Barack Obama said, the administration has said very clearly that he's a private citizen, and his views carry no weight at all as far as the administration is concerned. And the last point on that is, I think it has been very clearly mentioned that an MOU has already been signed between the General Electric and the HAL for the GE F414 jet engines. So I think we can be quite hopeful that, in fact, confident that this will go through. And I have read somewhere that maybe, the first things would start coming out by the end of next year. So I feel quite, Abhijit said cautiously optimistic. I would put it much above that. My level of optimism is much greater than just being. I think the United States, you have drawn a very interesting parallel between what happened with China in the late 70s and early 80s and what is happening with India now. And I think there is some sort of a correlation. The United States appears to have made a strategic decision to support India in its growth as a major technological power going forward.
I'll go to Abhijit Iyer Mitra. Mukesh Ambani made a statement about having only non-Chinese products or for the 5G infrastructure that they have built pan-India. This is a geopolitical statement, not a businessman statement. It carries geopolitical significance. At a time when China's social media, China's telecommunication network is either in or accepted to the West, the UK also stopped after initially buying. There are digital lines which are now being drawn across the world, and we are co-opting in a system of America very clearly. Earlier, you had Huawei equipment in some Indian manufacturers also used it, also telecommunication companies. Now that line with Mukesh Ambani's statement shows that clearly where we are. What do you feel is happening here?
Look, I think we're going towards digital independence. I don't think we're getting co-opted into the American side of things. I think as our capacity grows, we're going more and more independent, even of America if necessary. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tarun, but as far as I know, the 5G that Ambani is talking about, he claims to have developed himself. This isn't a purchased product or obviously not a Chinese product, but it's not a purchased from the West product either. There is technology that may have been purchased from the West. Yes. But when I read his statement, it seemed to me it was entirely an India developed thing. Now, remember, it isn't all that difficult to develop. It's just that, the West has all these technologies. They're just fragmented and they're in different countries. They're at much higher price points than Chinese technology. So that Ambani's focusing on it is very significant. But notice he's also focusing on several other things. He bought these very crucial, hydrogen production is a very carbon intensive process, or at least was. He bought this particular technology that reduced the energy efficiency of hydrogen production exponentially. And if you notice, Nitin Gadkari drives around in a hydrogen-powered car. Remember, EVs, the batteries are overwhelmingly from China for almost everybody. The Koreans do make very good batteries. The Japanese do make very good batteries, but they certainly don't seem to have the market penetration that Chinese batteries do. I think in the case of batteries, we will take a parallel path. I think in the case of 5G, Ambani has shown us a parallel path. I think in terms of net payments, UPI and what we're trying to do with UPI, because, there's actually one of those very few extraordinary, where both sides are right kind of debate happening within government right now. Do we need a redundancy system, so a second UPI, or do we first expand the current UPI, conquer markets, and then focus on redundancy? And this is this is what a world leader does. This is the kind of conversation you have in a world leader, because we are the world leader in digital payments and things like that. The fourth thing is, if you go to Rajiv Chandrasekhar's timeline, he has announced that there will be a sort of data localization bill, that they will be required to save data, store data here. It is on the anvil. I think we are moving towards a sort of, again, to use a foreign policy analogy, not a NATO ally, but say something like a Sweden, well, not Sweden right now, not like a non-NATO Sweden, but like one that can join NATO if it wants, but will not join NATO immediately.
But because you say this, I'll add before I go to Mr. Lalit Bhasin for his final comment. Prime Minister Modi's initiative for the 30-minute call with President Putin after coming back from America,
yes,
underlines the independence.
It's absolutely. And look, this is one of the great unsung victories. We can't trumpet about it too much for obvious reasons, is how people don't realize this, but in February, March, April, right up to June last year, the kind of pressure that was being put on us was brutal, to break off ties with Russia, to join them in their sanctions and all of that. We weathered all of that. And they hate us for it, but now they're grudgingly thankful for it, because remember, we helped them. What we did help them tide over a lot of their sort of dogmatic ideological positions through the energy supply chains and things like that.
Yeah, the point well taken. Mr. Lalit Bhasin, your final comment.
Yeah. You see, as President Biden had, while giving a shirt to the Prime Minister, our Prime Minister Modi, which had inscription there, AI, that is America, India. Now, AI would stand for America, India, and our focus of our discussions and further conversation should be on our bilateral relationship with the United States, the horse, and regardless of what is our position with regard to Russia or with regard to China. We have to stand on our own inherent strength, and our economy has withstood so many challenges and hiccups in the past that we can do that. And US economy is very strong. Therefore, let us focus on strengthening Indo-US relations, regardless of what US has relationship with Russia, or India's relationship with China, or US relationship with China and India and all that, you see. So that is because Ambassador Garcetti said that our relationship is based on trust. Only 4 days ago, he made a statement. It is based on trust. And this trust is not just for 5 years. This trust is like everlasting. It may go on for 25 years, 50 years, or thereafter. Therefore, let us focus on AI, that is America-India relationship. Thank you.
Point very well taken. We're almost out of time, but we'll do part 2 of this discussion 2 weeks from now. I appreciate Ambassador Ashok Sujanhar, Vijitayan Mitra, Dr. Lalit Bhasin for sparing time for this important issue. Your views are greatly appreciated. You all brought for inputs which were very valuable. In a sense, it enriched our knowledge on this subject. Also, different perspectives that you brought forward on this discussion. Thank you so very much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tarun. Thank you. Pleasure
Thank you.
with you. Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.